So this is the video going over the Chapter 4 review multiple choice. Okay, so for number 1 here, and I'll just say some general advice. This chapter is hardly any numbers and a whole lot of words, right? So every single question, read it carefully, read it through twice, underline things as you need to, take notes on a separate sheet of paper about what is important. Do what you need to do to correctly, technically read the problems so that you correctly understand the situation and you can correctly read through the answers. There's just a lot of slow, careful reading happening on this test, and it is worth taking the time and other strategies to make sure you're reading things correctly. So on here, I underlined. On the test, obviously you can't underline, but you can take notes on a separate sheet of paper or something. I kept track of what my treatments were: flashcards and computer. Maybe I'll change colors just so you can see what I'm doing. Flashcards and computer. I'm noticing they're randomly assigned to the 2 treatments. They're blocking by gender. And then they're saying it cannot be a double-blind experiment. What is wrong with it? So double-blind would be when both the people in the experiment, so the children, and the people interacting with those children do not know who is getting which treatments. Well, in this case, the treatments are paper flashcards in front of them or a computer program. So both the children and the people interacting with those children know which treatment they're getting because it's obvious. You can't hide whether you're on a computer or not. So that would be C. Some of the other things they talked about was around the gender issue. And that's a blocking issue about how you might be separating them out into separate groups to run separate experiments in the beginning. But that's all before the random assignment happens. That's all before the treatments happen. So that's not an issue around blinding. That's around blocking and other things. But the blinding issue is purely around, do the people in the experiment and the people interacting with those people, do they know who is getting which treatment? Okay, number 2. So which of the following statements explains why it would not be appropriate to say that everyone should take an aspirin every other day? Okay, so what's wrong with this? So specifically, they said that it is male physicians that were doing this. So because the sample was not a representative sample, not a random sample of everyone, it was only a sample of male physicians, you can only generalize the results to a population of male physicians. So different results may occur in individuals in other occupations. That's totally true. People who are not physicians might have a different situation. Maybe different for females. And so these are about generalization. Or I should circle them, I guess, because they're reasons why it would not be appropriate. And then although taking aspirin may be preventing heart attacks, we're getting some evidence of that. We don't know how it affects other aspects of health. And this is just kind of, in general, we can speak about our one variable, heart attacks. This study doesn't tell us about all the other variables that create good health in general. So we can't say take an aspirin every other day because maybe even if it does reduce heart attacks, that might be having other effects that we don't know. So the study only can generalize out to heart attacks. That's not enough to be able to say, yes, you should do it every day because there's 1,000 other variables involved in your overall health. So it is 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so number 3, again about generalization. The people in the sample were women. They were students at Midwestern colleges. So that is the people that we can generalize this out to. And it is an observational study, so we can only talk about generalizing to a population, but it has to be a population like the sample. So it has to be women who are students at Midwestern colleges in the United States. Okay. Number 4, this is describing a matched pairs situation. So again, remember, matched pairs is when each thing or person in the study or each alike pair in the study gets both treatments. So in this case, these 30 employees each got both treatments. They tried out both the new and the current desk chair. So let's look at all 5 things here, and then E will end up being right. So for A, volunteering doesn't necessarily make it a bad experiment. The reality is whenever you do experiments with people, it's nearly always volunteers because you can't really force people to do anything. It's unethical to force them to do things. So volunteering is just having volunteers to work with is part of doing experiments with people. It does not make it a bad experiment. It says at least 2 new treatments. It needs to be at least 2 treatments total. They don't have to both be new things. It could be the old chair and the new chair. That's plenty to compare. So, each employee should be assigned only one. That's not true. In a matched pairs design like this one, each employee got both treatments. So it says, okay, for D, using a coin flip does not guarantee that 15 employees will use each chair first. It'll still give roughly a 50-50 choice. It would be better to do a coin flip with the first, keep doing coin flips until you've hit 15 for one of them, and then now automatically the rest would get the other. So you could force it to be 15 and 15, but it doesn't have to be. Doing a coin flip will still give you a 50-50 chance. So it'll be around 50-50. So in the end, it is a well-designed experiment. There's random assignment because they got randomly assigned which chair to try out first. There's replication. There were 30 people total. So it replicated 30 times. And a comparison of at least 2 treatment groups. So between the current chair and the new chair. Okay, 5. So we're looking for non-response bias. So it's A, because 300 of the surveys were not returned. 300 people chose to not respond to the survey. Let's see, in B and in E, the fact that they said all surveys were returned means there's no non-response there. C is referring to voluntary response because it's people who were choosing to listen to the radio show. And D is just a straight up SRS, 500 random people. Okay. 6. We are looking for causation here. So she administered this survey, and then which of the following describes why the method of data collection will prevent her from achieving her goal? So why is this bad? And it comes down to causation can only come from experiments. When you're doing random assignment and you have 2 treatments to compare, so all the other variables in the situation get washed out. So causation cannot be determined from a survey. Surveys can collect data. This is not necessarily true. This is not true. You can just give it to a good sample. And while this is true, it's not the reason that she's in trouble here. The bigger reason is she can't show causation without doing an experiment. An observational study is not good enough. Okay, dog food. So they wish to reduce the variability due to natural differences in puppy growth rates. What's a good strategy? So blocking is, and specifically, dog breed is a good variable to block by because a Chihuahua is probably not going to gain the same amount of weight in a month as, a golden retriever or a bigger dog. So by keeping this experiment separate within dog breeds, you can start to really notice the differences between the dog food. Blocking on geographic location shouldn't be affecting dog weights in any significant way anyway. So that would not be an appropriate variable to block on. And then C, D, and E are all talking about stratifying, and that's the wrong word. Stratifying is about sampling and is just a different strategy within sampling of making sure you're getting a little bit from each of some categories. It's not about experiments, and it's not blocking. It's not the same as blocking. Okay, so this one. Which of the following is the most important reason for the random assignment of color? Okay, so let's jump straight to the right answer, and then we'll talk about the wrong answers. So for C, some babies you could see having certain preferences for certain colors. Maybe they had yellow and green. So maybe like the yellow is really bright and the green is not very bright. And so the babies just automatically go towards the yellow. we want to make sure that the babies are choosing the puppet because they understand or don't understand that one is a good guy and one's a bad guy. We don't want them to be biased by the color of their puppet. So, on a side note, the better way to handle this is just have both puppets be the same color. It seems silly to have them be different colors and then randomly assign them, but whatever. Okay, so we want to make sure it's like a confounding variables issue. We want to make sure that we are not getting mixed up between color of the puppet and whether they are doing good behavior or bad behavior. So some of these answers I think are kind of silly. So like 60 times is not going to create wear on the puppet in a way that a baby would notice and care about. The puppeteer might grow tired of doing the same show, the same puppet colors. I don't know who this puppeteer is, but this is not a reasonable problem to be worried about. D is making it sound like they're trying to really do 2 experiments in one and test color and right versus wrong. And you cannot do that in an experiment. You have to narrow it down to one variable that you are looking at a time. So we want to get rid of that confounding variable of color, not also test for it at the same time. And then E is kind of silly. Like maybe other older kids might care about worrying about boy colors and girl colors, which aren't even really a thing anyway. But babies don't care. So anyway, C. C is the best answer. 9. Which of the following does not describe a sampling method that is a potential source of voluntary response? So which one is not voluntary response? So A is not, because they're saying they're giving it to 30 students and they didn't say anything about not getting them all back. Oh, that's non-response. So they're back up. I got that mixed up with non-response for a second. So for A, they are randomly selecting the people to give the survey to. So they didn't have a chance to volunteer for the survey. They just, you either are in or out. So for B, here they have to call. In C, they have to choose to stop at a table. D, they have to choose to respond. E, they're going to be interested in extra credit. So that's going to make people want to do it. So all the other ones have things going on that require students to volunteer themselves into it. So that's going to create voluntary response bias. And that's it. Gerlicher out.